Hello everyone and welcome to this troubleshooting video of our SSLI series. In this video, we are going to have a look at the things that we need to be on the lookout for once we are done configuring our network in order to make sure that our network is working the way it's supposed to. And also, if there are any issues, where to go and how to resolve them. We start off by looking at the L3 topology. This is the topology that we've applied onto our home lab. In this topology, we should have a client machine on one side connected to an A10 device. The A10 device is connected to a security device and in turn connected to a gateway router. There are three separate subnets on the network. The way we have this network set up on our home lab is like this. We have a client machine connected to a vThunder. Then the vThunder Insight partition is connected to the outside partition on a separate subnet, and then on a third subnet, the outside partition is connected to the server. So SSL traffic comes in on port 443 on the inside partition from the client. It's decrypted, sent out on an 8080 port towards the outside partition. The outside partition receives this traffic on port 8080, re-encrypts the traffic and sends it out on port 443 towards the server, and it works the same way on the way back to client. Let's look at the things we need to be on a lookout for once we've done the configuration and once we have traffic flowing. We're going to look at this based on partitions, so let's look at the inside partition first. So on the inside partition, the first thing to be on the lookout for are the ACL hit counters. We have to see whether or not we are getting any hits on our access control list. This can be done using the command show access list and then entering the access list number. So as you can see, our counters initially are 0. Let's see if we create a connection if the numbers are going to go up. We refresh the page, go back, re-enter the command show access list, and here we can see that we have a single hit on our access list 190. This means that traffic has successfully flown from the client machine to the inside partition. The second thing that we're going to be on the lookout for is if we're getting any hits on our wildcard vport 443 and if the counters are going up. The counters should go up with every connection that's created from the client to the server. This can be done using the command show SLB virtual server, which will show us counters for all the different vports. So once again, I've entered the command initially and there are no counters. Now let's move on to our browser, refresh the page, go back to the CLI and see if we have any counters. And you can see that we have some counters on the port 443 HTTPS, which means that we have received traffic on the port 443. The third thing that we should keep in mind is to check the real server counters. We're more interested in the real server 8080 counters at this point. All the counters can be checked using the command show SLB server. This will show us counters for all the servers that we have configured on the inside partition. So initially, you can see that all the counters are 0. We're going to go to our browser, click refresh, move back to our CLI, and re-enter the command. Here you can see that on our TCP port, that is 8443, our counters are actually going up, and therefore the traffic has successfully moved on to our HTTP port. The fourth and final thing that we need to check on the inside partition is whether or not we are getting certificates created. This can be checked using the command show SLB SSL forward proxy cert. You enter the virtual server name, then you enter the port number 443 and all. Once you click enter, you'll be shown the certificate that was created by the SSLI device and the counters for it. Now before we establish any connections, if we enter the command show SLB SSL forward proxy cert, it's going to show us that there are no certificates found in the hash table. But if we go to our web browser and if we refresh it, come back to our CLI and re-enter the command, you can see that we've created a certificate at the SSLI device on the inside partition. On the outside partition, the first thing we have to look for are the ACL hit counters. Once again, this can be seen by entering the command show access list and the access list number. So now on the outside partition, you can see that I've entered the access list command show access list, and it doesn't show me any hits. If I go to the browser, refresh, and re-enter the command, you can see that the counter has gone up, which means that the connection is working. The second thing we need to be on a lookout for are the wildcard vport 8080 counters. Keep in mind that this is 8080 on the outside and 443 on the inside partition. The command is similar to the inside partition. It's show SLB virtual server, which shows us all the counters for all the ports under a virtual server. So now if I enter this command without making any connections previously, you can see that all the counters are 0. But once I've started a connection from the client to the server and then I enter the command, you can see that the numbers have gone up for the HTTP port, just like we discussed on the slides. The third and final thing we need to look out for are the real server 443 counters. These are real server counters for the port number 443. This can be done using the command show SLB server. So now if I enter the command show SLB server, the counters should be 0 as they are. But if I establish a connection between the client and the server and re-enter the command, you can see that the numbers have gone up for port 443 on the outside partition. This means that our whole setup works exactly the way it should. Now let's look at some of the issues that we might face while we are conducting our troubleshooting phase. The first problem that we might see is we aren't getting any hits on our ACLs. For this, we need to make sure that we have the command IP allow promiscuous VIP under each virtual interface. As you can see on the inside partition, if you do a show running configuration and you go to the interface and you go to the virtual interface sections, you can see that the command has been applied in our configuration. Similarly, on the outside, you can also check it using the command show running configuration. Another thing that we should do if we are not getting any hits on our ACL is to see if we have the correct VLAN in the access list. You will see a line that looks like this on the inside and the outside partitions. This can also be checked using the command show running configuration. Another problem that we might run into is that we are not getting any wildcard vport hits. If this happens, we need to make sure that the ACL is actually bound to our VIP. As you can see in these pictures, this one is from the inside partition while the second one is from the outside. And you can see that our ACLs are actually bound to our virtual servers. Therefore, this is going to work. This can be checked using the command show running configuration. The third problem that we might run into is that we are not getting any hits on our real servers. For this, we have to ensure that the real servers are up and running. This can be done using the command show SLB server. Once we enter that command, we'll see an output like this. This is from the inside partition, while the second output is from the outside partition. Here you can see that the state of all the real servers is up, which means that the servers are functional. If they aren't showing as up, then we have to make sure that we can ping the server. This will be the FW1 server on the inside partition and the GW server on the outside partition. We also have to make sure that health check is disabled for all the ports under a real server. As you can see in our output, we have health check disabled under each and every port under a real server on the inside partition as well as on the outside partition. The last thing we have to keep in mind is if we are not getting any certificate creation on the SSLI device, we have to make sure that there is a default gateway and it is reachable from the A10 device. We also have to make sure that we can ping the remote server from the inside partition. The last thing we have to make sure of is that port 0 TCP counters on the outside partition's virtual server has incremented, meaning that you'll have to look under the virtual server SSLI underscore out underscore ingress on the outside partition. As you can see in this picture, the port 0 TCP on the outside partition's virtual server have in fact incremented, and therefore we shouldn't have any issues on our deployment. But if you do have any problems, these will be the places to check. In this first image, you can see the complete configuration file for the inside partition. And in this image, you can see the complete configuration file for the outside partition. I hope this video was informative for you, and I thank you for watching.